What is gut microbiome?
Gut microbiome literally speaks to every single organ and function in our body. So, like the gut brain axis, there is a gut skin axis, there's a gut metabolism axis, there's a gut energy axis.
Gut health even affects your brain performance.
Brain fog is actually a big red flag related to gut dysbiosis. Stress, literally, and I'm seeing this in my practice, is becoming the root cause of almost all imbalances.
Like, how do I know I have good gut health or bad gut health?
Extreme bloating, constant burping as gas baby. I've seen people who come to me who've taken antibiotics for years together. When we think about the gut, we only think about what we are eating, but actually everything is influenced by the gut. The gut is also influenced by everything.
We've all seen probiotic products on the market. One that I was having regularly, then I just saw the nutrition content. There's a ton of sugar in it.
Yes, antibiotics, antacids, a lot of the other lifestyle factors that disrupt our gut microbiome. What is in abundance? Is it the pathogens? And if it is the pathogens, then what pathogens specifically? Or is it the good bacteria? There's a lot of talk around intermittent fasting, and it's wonderful. I think it's a great tool for both longevity and gut health. Again, personalization is key.
At Orange Health, we're launching a new gut microbiome test. Hi, folks. Today we have Tanya Malik on the show. Tanya is the founder of the Longevity Lab. She's a functional and clinical nutritionist and helps people manage their gut, metabolic health, as well as helping you how you control your aging. Hi, Tanya. Welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here and very excited to talk to you about gut health, longevity, biohack. These things are areas that I'm also very curious about, and I know a lot of our listeners and a lot of our followers are keen to know. And of course, the core topic today is about gut health. So let's just start with like getting a sense of what drew you towards gut health and specializing in this area. You know.
All right. Thank you for having me here, Dhruv. And I'm equally excited to have this conversation. Everything you spoke about is something I'm not only passionate about, but have been doing it for years. So, really looking forward to the rest of the conversation. I think to start out really quickly, what I do essentially is translational research, which is turning clinical understanding into practice in functional nutrition related to gut health, women's health, biomarker science, and longevity. Pretty much everything you spoke about. What drew me to gut health specifically, honestly, started out with a personal experience. I think when I started this journey, I found myself sort of struggling with hypothyroidism and PCOS, having been in nutrition and health for a long time, and then ending up with something that you're working on day in and day out was very surprising for me. And I wanted to then dive deeper and say, okay, I did have the genetic susceptibility, but there's definitely something else driving it, because I knew I was eating right and I was kind of doing everything right in terms of exercise, lifestyle, diet. And when I started diving deep, I recognized that gut health and gut microbiome specifically had such a big role to play in my hormonal health that I just had to really take that in and study and understand how and what that actually means when it comes to functional health. And that's how I got into gut health. That's how I got into epigenomics, which is an extension of how lifestyle influences everything from our microbiome to our genes. And I think as an extension to that, then when I started applying it in practice, I recognized that this was true for literally everybody I was working with, that our gut healths are actually at the center of all of our organs and health imbalances.
Yeah. No, that's really good to know. It's from what I read, it feels like the motivation comes from personal experience,
Right.
right? From a personal sort of connect to the problem. So I completely understand that. Gut health has been around for many years, but in the recent part, it's suddenly become very hot. A lot of people are talking about it.
True.
There's a lot of interest in the public and in the scientific community around this. What's driving this trend?
I think it's multifaceted, right? The first thing is that there's now or has been technology where we're able to do new age sequencing, really understand what's happening and what the microbiome is made of, and understand the genomics or the microbe genomics. That's one part that's driving the research. And then applicability of the research became really real when a couple of research studies that came out with tangible results saying, hey, listen, your gut microbiome is influencing everything from how you eat, what you feel like eating, and how your metabolism is reacting. So there was this potentially famous study done on mice where the gut microbiome taken from a lean mice put into an obese mice made a big difference in the metabolic markers of the obese mice, and that kind of sparked this whole discussion that is it actually going to influence everything to do with metabolic pathways, not just our mood, and we were already talking about the gut brain axis, but is it actually going to influence so much more than what we recognized? And I think that just had a cascading effect both in the scientific community as well as the consumers, because the day and age that we live in today, thankfully, a lot of the research is now publicly available for people to recognize. Researchers are talking about it on various platforms. And when we translated this into action, into practice, it was real. The results were tangible. The efficacy of protocols were quantifiable. So it's still early stage, very honestly. There's so much that we know, but there is a lot more that we don't know. So I feel like this is tip of the iceberg. It's only going to become more and more important.
Got it. So maybe we will start with the basics. What is gut microbiome? We've heard about this. We know we've heard gut health, gut microbiome, but what exactly is it? And like you said, a few things. There's a gut brain axis. There is like it affects your metabolic pathway. So we'll get into that next. But just what is gut microbiome?
Great. All right. So, very simply put, it's sort of a community. I like to call it a universe of microbes or beings, which are an amalgamation of bacteria, fungus, viruses. Now, I know bacteria, virus, they all sound negative, but actually, a lot of, and in fact, everything that comprises of the gut microbiome actually not only play a role in a few things that we just spoke about, they keep us alive, they keep us healthy, right? So if I may get a little philosophical for a second, and just kind of zoom out of just a physical health or a biological viewpoint, think of ourselves as mini walking talking universes. So these lives inside us, we have a symbiotic relationship with them. They obviously, we are the host, they live inside us, but by living inside us, they're keeping us alive.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, I know, but it is just that real.
I have a lot more questions. I don't know that answer. Now, so and how does this affect our health?
Oh boy, in every way. So, and again, like I said, we've from a research perspective, because it's so recent in science years, that we've just started to figure out how important the gut microbiome is and how much it influences different organs. So, to kind of answer this in a short manner, or in a simplistic manner, the gut microbiome literally speaks to every single organ and function in our body. So, like the gut brain axis, there is a gut skin axis, there's a gut metabolism axis, there's a gut energy axis. Okay, so the microbiome literally influences everything else. And I think if I may try and simplify this a little bit more, just think about it, right? Our gut is, or the digestive system and the gut as an extension of it, is literally where our source of life, which is food, comes from. So it only makes sense for it to be the center of everything to do with health.
So we could pick one of those.
Right.
Let's say the gut brain axis. Tell me more about that. I've heard that like gut health even affects your brain performance and things
Right.
like that. Like maybe you could touch upon a little bit
Right.
more on that side.
Yeah, absolutely happy to. I think it's one of the most interesting accesses that I like studying about and talking about. So, again, it works in multiple ways. Now, the gut brain, and when we say access, it's a two-way communication, and it happens through a neural pathway. It happens through our immune pathway. It happens through chemical pathway. I think chemical would be the easiest to explain, so I'll start with that. But our gut microbiome, which again is the bacteria, fungi, viruses, that whole universe, they actually synthesize or create neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are nothing but chemicals that kind of transmit messages, or our brain uses to make changes or inform. Now, things like serotonin or GABA, typically we all of us know serotonin as the happy hormone, is made in the gut by the gut microbiome. GABA is the relaxing hormone, again made in the gut microbiome. So, just picking this one example, think about this, that if your gut microbiome is not healthy and not happy, you're not creating enough and the right kind of the neurochemicals that are required for you to balance your mood and your well-being. And mood is again not in isolation, right? It affects so many other things. And I can talk about the HPA axis and get into the whole sort of hormonal balance and homeostasis of it, which I'm trying not to get into the larger aspect of science, but just kind of simplifying it. Think about the importance of just serotonin for a minute. If that is out of balance because your microbiome is not healthy and happy, then imagine what it's going to do to everything related to how you feel, and then the cascading effect of one hormone to the other. So that's one example, which is the chemical. The second example is even more interesting, which is the neural pathway. There is something known as the vagus nerve, which I think has recently become pretty popular in terms of dialogue, right? We know it starts from the base of the brain, goes literally everywhere to all of our organs, including our heart, to our digestive system. And this literally is a communication pathway between the brain and the microbes, and which means that it's a two-way path. So if the gut microbiome is not healthy, out of balance, is going to impact how our brain transmits and communicates with the rest of our body. So it's going to impact everything from mood, brain fog or focus to energy, but also vice versa. If you're not feeling well, if we are, sort of mentally feeling low, or there's depression and anxiety, our gut microbiome is also going to get anxious and going to get depressed. And then now this becomes sort of like a catch-22 situation, because what do you solve for first? So the vagus nerve is actually very real, and it's part of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible to keep us calm and keep us sort of build our resilience. And I think another, thankfully, dialogue that has started recently, which is very, very important, is how important resilience to stress is, because cause of almost all imbalances, either hormonal or metabolic. And again, the gut brain axis plays a very tangible role in this.
Wow. Okay. So this is like a lot to unpack over there.
There, yeah, I think anything we touch around gut microbiome and the accesses, even with what little we know today with research, there is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's so much more for us to learn as we keep moving forward in research.
So just some more basics, right? So what are signs of good gut health? Like how do I know I have good gut health or bad gut health?
Great. I think that's a wonderful question. Kind of simplifying a checklist as to what to look for. So I think for starting out with the most important is a regular, comfortable, consistent bowel movement. If you ideally 1 to 3 times a day, it should be comfortable, so you're not kind of stressing about it. The consistency, not getting too deep into it, but should be smooth and ideal, which I think a lot of us understand. Second, not a lot of gas and bloating. So some amount of gas is normal, depending on, sometimes we eat here and there. But if you're consistently bloated, uncomfortable after meals, have a lot of acidity or foul smelling gas, then that's a red flag. Brain fog. Brain fog is actually a big symptom or a red flag related to gut dysbiosis, inflammation. You'll be surprised, and this is something I found interesting when I started learning this, that a lot of inflammation in people I work with actually was driven because of gut dysbiosis and leaky gut. You see inflammation markers are off the charts, and then you're trying to figure out where is this inflammation coming from. It's because of a leaky gut. And I think the other sign, which is again tangible, is your skin health. Your skin is a immediate reflection of what's happening inside. In fact, today we are recognizing that the skin is also the first marker of how well we are aging, but it's a direct reflection of your gut health. If your gut is out of balance, you're going to see inflammatory diseases like even psoriasis, for example, but also acne. So I think these are starting. Another good one is actually bad sleep and low energy, because your gut microbiome plays a role in synthesizing and balancing melatonin as well as your circadian rhythm. So it's literally related to everything, but I think if you want to kind of simmer it down, a consistent, comfortable bowel movement, easy digestion, good immunity. If you're constantly falling sick, look at your gut first.
Got it, got it, got it. And you know, so we talked about what are signs of good gut health, bad gut health. What wanted to touch upon a little bit about what are good sort of gut health practices, right? I've heard, for example, that antibiotics are bad for your gut.
Oh, yes.
It's really common, right, for us to, for doctors to prescribe antibiotics. Lots of people self-prescribe antibiotics. What should they do if they've taken antibiotics? Is there a way to improve your gut health?
For sure. But, just kind of taking a step back and answering the first part of the question first, unfortunately, a lot of us are abusing antibiotics, right? Because, like you said, a lot of us self prescribe it and it's not necessarily prescribed by the doctor. Sometimes even practitioners prescribe it as the first sort of course of action. And an antibiotic is meant to kill bacteria, and it's going to go in. It's not going to look at what's actually good for you, what's actually bad for you. It's a single sort of mechanism, and it's going to disrupt your gut microbiome. Now, yes, there are corrective measures, and I've seen people who come to me who've taken antibiotics for years together, and that's just how bad it is when I talk about abusing antibiotics. So what you can do, I think, first is, obviously, if you're on a course, complete the course first. And immediately after that, the simple 5R protocol that we talk about when it comes to gut health. So, one is removing any triggers that you have already recognized. Most of us in today's day and age, unfortunately, have some food trigger that irritates our gut. And in most cases, we are aware of what the trigger is, but we of course, ignore it, but we are aware of what it is. If you aren't aware of it, then just remove potential popular triggers like gluten, dairy, soy, and sugar and processed foods, which is literally everything nowadays. So I know it sounds hard, but remove it for a week, 10 days, ideally 15 odd days. Just give your gut the break that it requires to heal itself. It's kind of like if you've got a wound, you're not going to keep, let's say, scratching it or using that particular area of your body. Just let it heal. I'm not saying you cannot have it forever. After you've removed, just do a simple repair protocol by making sure you're having magnesium, zinc, the right kind of probiotics, which means from your food, as well as supplementation if required. And food is where an element of personalization comes into play, because really knowing what is out of balance in your gut microbiome plays a huge role in deciding what kind of diet or what kind of food is going to work well for repairing your gut. And happy to get a little deeper into that as we progress. We're right now just talking about, eating the right kind of probiotic heavy or the right kind of healthy food for the gut. And after that, then you reintroduce. You can slowly reintroduce the foods that you've eradicated and make sure it's working for your gut. And foundational changes. So, when we think about the gut, we only think about what we are eating. But actually, if we go back and we talk about all of the axis we just spoke about, if everything is influenced by the gut is also influenced by everything. So, your sleep, your exercise, your mental and emotional health, these, I always say, start here. This is the foundation. And, for example, going back to the gut brain axis, you could be doing everything right. You've eradicated stuff. You are eating the right kind of food. You are loading up on probiotics, but you are extremely stressed. Your gut microbiome is extremely stressed. And a lot of other imbalances that happen in the body because of the chronically high cortisol, or sometimes you get into adrenal fatigue. So these foundational elements must go hand in hand, but typically this is what you can do to recover or nourish your gut after the antibiotic course.
Got it, got it, got it. And you touched upon one topic, probiotics, right?
Yes.
We've all seen probiotic products on the market. And I remember a few years ago, I picked up one that I was having regularly. Then I just saw the nutritional content. There's a ton of sugar in it,
Yes.
right? Now, you just said sugar is bad for gut health, right?
Absolutely.
So, where we've got kombucha over here. So what exactly, how should you figure out what probiotics to have, probiotics, fermented foods, like what exactly should you be thinking about?
So this is a big question. Now, there are certain elements of personalization that come into play, and that's where the gut microbiome tests come into play, where you can kind of, really get deep down and see what's the bacterial profile, what is missing, what is in abundance, what is it that you need to correct for. But even if I kind of, without deep diving into the personalization piece, which should be the foundation, but talk about what to look for, you rightly said everything in the market, unfortunately, is laden with sugars and chemicals. And hence, clean label supplements are important, and that's the reason why one of the brands that I built comes from clean label probiotics. But I think what's important to see is that don't just chase the billion CFUs, right? It doesn't matter. It's not that more is better. Like anything in life, more is not necessarily better. Make sure you have the right strains, number one. Number two, it's clean label so that you're not unnecessarily now adding sugars and chemicals, which, like we discussed earlier, is actually bad for the gut. And third is also your diet. One should be personalized to your gut, but second should be something that is nourishing your gut in tandem with probiotic. So it's not that, it's a magic pill that's going to just magically do everything and set your gut microbiome right. It all goes hand in hand. And just a note on kombucha, if kombucha is made well, the sugar's fermented, so it's okay.
Got it. Just one last question on probiotics before we move further. So I've also heard that probiotics, recommendation to have it is on an empty stomach and then give it some time before you actually eat something else, because the bacteria needs to sort of, I don't know, get absorbed in your gut
Yes.
ecosystem. What is that exactly?
So, see, typically the bacteria is a living being, and it has to survive through your stomach acid and then make it to your large intestine. So, large intestine is where your gut microbiome actually resides, or majority of it. Or when we talk about gut microbiome, it's a large intestine. Now, when you're eating it with food or after food, obviously your stomach is now acidic, right? It's released the acids, all of the enzymes that are required to break the food have been released, which means more likely your gut, your probiotic bacteria is going to die in the stomach. So you want to have it first thing in the morning before you've triggered any of the acidic release or the enzymatic release, and that's why first thing in the morning. And second, anyway, feed the universe that lives inside you first. So again, a little philosophical view, but ideally it's because you want to avoid the stomach acid.
Got it. And do you need to give a gap after you have your probiotic?
A little bit, because you want it to pass through the entire gut to the large intestine before you eat something and then release the enzymes and the acids. So it doesn't have to be a huge gap. Typically, an hour is good.
Got it. Super. At Orange Health, we're launching a new gut microbiome test. We're super excited about this, and we wanted to ask you that you've seen what a gut microbiome test is, right? Can you explain what a test like this can reveal about a person's health? Because that's the foundation of figuring out what to do next. So, from your perspective, what exactly does a gut microbiome test tell about someone?
Yeah, absolutely, and congratulations on the microbiome test. I think it tells a lot. So, in simple words, for a user, I think what's important to understand, one is diversity, the type of bacteria that you have in your gut. And when I say type of bacteria, they, like I said when I started out, that the first thought that we have when we talk about bacteria is negative. So there are pathogens, which is the negative bacteria, but then there's this whole universe that we are talking about right now, which is the good bacteria. Scientifically, we don't like to call it good and bad, but for the purpose of our discussion. So when you do this test, the first thing that becomes very crystal clear is what is in abundance. Is it the pathogens? And if it is the pathogens, then what pathogens specifically? Or is it the good bacteria? And sometimes, and in most cases, the good bacteria, unfortunately, is out of balance. It's not in abundance because, again, antibiotics, antacids, a lot of the other lifestyle factors that disrupt our gut microbiome. So getting that real clear picture, it's literally like a mark sheet in front of you where you know what needs to be corrected and what needs to be balanced. The other thing which goes a long way, and we often don't talk about when we're talking about the gut microbiome, because we end up talking about bacteria so much that we ignore the fungi. But in most cases, after an antibiotic use, there is SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overload, which means that there is a lot of bacterial growth where it shouldn't be. Second, there is also CIFO, when your fungus has become overgrown. Now, CIFO goes undetected for the longest period of time, but the gut microbiome test can actually show you what your fungal growth looks like. And is that something that you need to look at? And a lot of symptoms, specifically in women, vaginal yeast infection, somebody who's getting that recurrently should get a microbiome test, or at least assume that there is CIFO. And even skin infection, a lot of fungus skin infection, lead skin infection usually comes from CIFO. So these are immediate things that the person can see from a microbiome test. And another interesting thing that you can see is the bacteria that you have in your microbiome or in your gut, specifically the pathogens, are they resistant to a certain kind of antibiotic? If you have, sometimes you have to, like, for example, a lot of people today struggle with H. pylori. So if you do have that, you are going to have to go on an antibiotic course. That is very difficult to eradicate it just functionally. But then you know exactly what antibiotic you need to take. So you're not ending up taking something that actually your pathogens are resistant to, and then wreaking havoc in your gut microbiome before jumping onto the other one. So it's literally a mark sheet of your gut and can give you the deep insights that are required to make personalized decisions. And coming back to what you and I were talking about probiotics, now you know exactly what probiotic strains you need to take. So you're not just chasing numbers.
Got it. Got it. I mean, now the gut microbiome test does a lot of genetic sequencing and things like that also, right? I'll touch upon more on that. But what I was curious about is how is this different from, say, a stool culture test? Because, you can even detect H. pylori through that.
Right. So while H. pylori, yes, but more often than not, the stool culture test is sort of like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, right? But it's like a broader bird's eye view of whether something is wrong and needs to be addressed or it isn't. Like, do you have a pathogen overgrowth or you don't? But to figure out exactly what that pathogen is, or to figure out if my stool is not balanced, what exactly is the diversity and what type of bacteria and what strains of bacteria are out of balance, that only a microbiome test can show you, that the gut or the stool test cannot. Ideally, as a functional practitioner, the ideal situation is to have your blood work and your microbiome test go hand in hand, because that's a complete 360-degree picture.
So
So your blood
say,
test, your comprehensive blood test with your gut microbiome test.
got it.
That's a 360-degree picture.
And what
that's
blood
happening.
test would you do along with the gut microbiome
So
test?
typically, from a functional lens, I like to do a full panel, which includes your CBC, lipid, kidney, liver, and inflammation markers, homocysteine, and iron panel. This kind of gives you a holistic view of what's happening right now functionally. And then your microbiome in hand, I think this is the gold standard of getting started from a functional healing perspective.
Got it. Got it. So once, if you're curious about your gut health, get a gut microbiome test and get this sort of like blood panel done as
Right.
well.
So, for example, if somebody's struggling with IBS or somebody's struggling with chronic acidity, in fact, very recently, I had a dialogue on social media, and I just put out a small video on acidity, and I realized that it is surprisingly insane, the number of people who are struggling with chronic acidity. And Dhruv, you'll be surprised, a lot of us start popping antacids when we have acidity, but it's actually low stomach acid that leads to acidity like symptoms. It's not more stomach acid. So you're actually feeding that whole thing, and it starts with gut dysbiosis. And it also leads to gut dysbiosis because your stomach acid is meant to kill pathogens. So pathogens will not make it to your large intestine. So if you have chronic acidity and you've had it for years, you invariably are going to have gut dysbiosis. So
Got
I'd
it.
say that if you have any of these symptoms, get both. You have a holistic view, you know exactly what to heal.
So besides acidity, what are other symptoms that someone should think about before they get some kind of gut microbiome test done?
So extreme bloating, constant burping, there's something that's socially known as gas baby, where your stomach becomes really hard and bloated after a meal, about an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours after a meal. And otherwise, when you wake up in the morning, it's perfectly fine. That's classic SIBO. That means that there is a bacterial overload in your small intestine. Then any kind of fungal skin infection, you want to check for SIFO. It's typically that. Um, Extreme brain fog, a lot of fatigue, which is unexplained with rest of markers. Like, for example, you don't have a disease, but you're constantly feeling fatigued or tired, and you constantly have brain fog, or you're struggling with insomnia, which is unexplained. Of course, not considering you're having caffeine 2 hours before bed, but let's say you're struggling with sleep, again with no sort of understandable root causes or reasons. Now, all of these, I think, are a great a symptom or a great trigger for somebody to get a microbiome and a blood work done to look at a holistic picture.
Got it. And once they do this, what do they do next?
That's a great question. So, I think some amount of self education is important. I think all of us should know what a good gut microbiome test looks like. And I think I've seen your microbiome report. It's pretty self explanatory. A lot of it is easy to understand. You can see what's typical, what's atypical, and you kind of give a lot of sort of actionables in terms of diet and probiotics. That's a good starting point. Other than that, of course, go to a functional health practitioner and really do a deep dive in root causes and get a personalized healing protocol.
Got it. And once let's say you get this report, you've done your blood panel, you go to a functional health practitioner, uh, say things are off. How long does it typically take for a treatment for someone to go from like poor gut health to good gut health?
Now, there's so many factors, right? Again, this is so deeply personalized, and this is where the whole bio individuality aspect of functional healing comes into play. But if I'm to put a number, for somebody with average imbalances, you can start seeing real tangible changes in 1 month. Somebody with chronic issues, and let's say you've kind of been popping antacids for 6 years and 7 years, and I work with people like that, it can take at least 90 days for you to start seeing shifts, because you also imagine you've been popping a pill for 6 years, you can't completely stop it. Suddenly, it's almost like a drug, right? So you wean yourself off it slowly. So for somebody like that, about 3 months is when you start seeing shifts. For somebody who's just started developing symptoms, maybe over the last 1 year, within 30 days you can actually start seeing big changes.
Wow. I mean, 1 to 3 months is actually a really good timeline for someone to see benefits from.
It is, and of course, user behavior is always a variable that we work with. But this is considering ideal user complete 100% marks on that variable.
Got it. So we talked about lifestyle, we talked about food, some of these things. Like you said, I mean, our gut health affects our lifestyle and our lifestyle affects our
Yes.
food, right? Uh, how do environmental factors affect this? You live in NCR, high pollution levels, right? It's been in the
You're
news.
touching a nerve, by the way, sir.
Yeah. Does that does pollution levels affect our gut health?
Absolutely. So any kind of toxins, whether it's coming from food, whether you're breathing it in, or you're applying it on your skin, any kind of toxins are going to affect your gut microbiome. Because again, and if I may deep dive just a little bit, but your gut lining is sort of permeable, right? It's kind of, think of it like this. This is the best way that I can explain it. It has just enough gaps for the right kind of nutrients to enter your bloodstream, and it's perfectly, obviously built biologically. We are built perfectly to maintain our homeostasis, so it makes sure that just the right nutrients enter. Now we're constantly bombarding toxins. These toxins are going to erode the gut lining. After a point, this gut lining permeability just increases, which is what we call as leaky gut. Now leaky gut literally means that the toxins are going to start leaking inside your bloodstream. So you're not only disrupting your gut, you're actually disrupting everything. And this is where oxidative stress starts. This is where heavy metal or toxin buildup starts. And this is where inflammation starts. And then we know the cascading effect from there. So that's why I'm saying leaky gut for inflammation, more often than not, I find that it's the root cause.
So what are the top, say, 5 foods which are really bad for your gut health?
You know what's going to be number one?
No, I don't idea.
Sugar, right? I mean, also, so I was talking about the fungal overgrowth. Fungus loves sugar. So in the cases, and I'm going back to CIFO because CIFO goes undiagnosed for years together, and a lot of people have it without recognizing, and it loves sugar. And because it loves sugar, you are craving sugar, right? So it's kind of, again, it's the access. Now, sugar is 100% number one, also because it's toxic, right? It's going to erode the gut lining. It's going to disrupt your gut microbiome, which is further going to erode the gut lining because your gut microbiome creates something known as short chain fatty acids, which literally builds the mucus lining of your gut. It does a lot of other wonderful stuff, but it builds the mucus lining. Now you're feeding it sugar, which your good bacteria does not like. So you're literally killing it. It's kind of like poison for it. And now the bacteria is out of balance. It's not creating the right amount of short chain fatty acids. It's disrupting the mucus lining. The permeability is increasing. The toxins are entering. So it's a full cascading effect, just starting with sugar. Second is processed foods. And unfortunately, a lot of people hate it when I say this, the refined oils and seed oils. purely because in isolation they would be fine, and seeds are not bad. It's just the seed refined oil. It's very high in omega 6. And omega 6 in isolation is not bad. It's just that the ratio of omega 6 and omega 3 that we have today is very, very off balance. Because of which, omega 6 without the right amount of omega 3 is pro inflammation. And inflammation starts with the gut, again, the leaky gut. So, sugar, processed foods, actually, I'll shift this sugar, seed, refined oils and seed oils, and then processed foods. And then, of course, I'm going to say alcohol, smoking, and all of that, but these three are at the top of the pyramid.
And when you say processed foods, I mean, that's that's everything, right?
Yeah,
You know,
unfortunately. So let me rephrase it. Ultra processed packaged foods. So read the label. If it's got ingredients that you cannot pronounce, if it's got ingredients that you've read about and you know that it's toxic and it's highly just essentially chemicals, avoid that.
got it. One food that I want to particularly ask you about is sugar replacements, right? How do they affect your gut health?
So, there's this whole debate about how sugar replacements affect our blood glucose level and our insulin. We know that having it consistently is going to trigger insulin rise, right? And if it is triggering insulin, it is going to also trigger your gut. So it's one off and you just have to indulge, it's fine. But if it's becoming a constant, it's not good for anything to do, whether it's your metabolic health or your gut health.
Got it. Got it. And is there any superfood that's good for your gut?
So while there are, but I usually refrain from saying what the superfoods are because again, there's so many layers of personalization that come into play. So for example, I'll tell you for somebody with a super healthy gut, you want to have good fiber, you want to have medium chain, fats like coconut oil, for example, or ghee. But I refrain from saying it purely because if you have SIBO, and again, a lot of people unfortunately have SIBO. If you're going to up the fiber in your food, you're actually going to worsen the situation because now you want to bring down the bacterial growth first and make sure the right bacteria is in the right place, which is your large intestine and not your small intestine, and then give it fiber. So here, having probiotics, having fiber, having chia seeds, it's actually going to worsen your situation. So that's why I refrain from saying superfood. But if you have a healthy gut, then fiber, which is chia seeds, resistant carbs like sweet potato. Nowadays people talk about cool down rice, which actually works, or ghee on rice, and even psyllium husk. This is considering everything is fine, your gut health is perfect. But is personalization.
I was hoping for some easy answers, but
Chia seed is pretty easy.
got it. And what about some of these fermented foods that are getting very popular? What's your view on that?
Again, fermented foods are great. And I think you can just make it at home. We've forgotten the easiest fermented food is pickle, or even Indian homemade kimchi is nothing but just vegetables that are fermented over 3 odd days. Having said that, it's great for somebody with good gut health. Again, if you have SIBO, you don't want to have fermented foods because you're feeding bacteria in an already overgrown bacterial environment.
Wow. So I guess the fundamental fact is that before you try to heal yourself or feed yourself any superfood, find out what's in your gut. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think just starting with a simple self check, right? Making sure, am I feeling absolutely fine? If I am, then there are no imbalances. Now I can start talking about superfoods. Just before we started this chat, somebody was asking me about what's the super supplement for longevity. And I'm like, hey, listen, people are popping and spending a lot of money and popping all of the trends around longevity while they have metabolic syndrome, while they have gut dysbiosis. It's not going to do anything. Just balance the imbalances first. Make sure that you are it's basically saying, I'm not even at the ground floor, but I'm already ready to bungee jump from, so you can't jump from the ground floor.
Yeah.
You have to first make your way up. So just make sure that the balance, the homeostasis, the basic fundamental balances are right. And then you build on it with superfoods and super supplements.
I guess it's true for anything, right? Like first figure out where you are and then
Absolutely.
solve from there.
Absolutely.
Got it. Got it. No, this is really helpful. Before we actually close, I wanted to touch upon something. You've been doing a lot of research on women's health, combining biodata with microbiome and everything. Tell us a bit more about that.
Right. Thanks for asking that, Dhruv. This is a very interesting space and something very close to my heart because a lot of data when it comes to women's health, actually health in general, but a little bit more about when it comes to women's health, we work with Caucasian data. There's very little bio data available in India. And we have just started recognizing the role gut microbiome plays when it comes to our hormonal health. Even something as simple as PCOS or estrogen dominance, and specifically when we're getting into peri and postmenopause. So that's the reason why amalgamating all of these biodata or biomarkers, specifically women above 35, is the focus point that I have in my lab, and looking at a lot of interesting health trends coming out of it.
Got it. And I hear a lot about premenopausal and things like that, right? Are there any markers that you can test for to know if you're in that phase? How do women know that? I mean, besides physical symptoms that some of them may experience, how is there any other way to know through your markers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think physical symptoms, of course, are number one. And I think we in general are pretty in tune with our body to start recognizing it. Sometimes we feel it, but we don't know what it is. So I think any kind of shifts, specifically in your if you're in that age bracket, start understanding that it could be a hormonal shift, and then start testing hormonal markers. So progesterone, estrogen, even testosterone, and DHEA. These are typical hormonal markers that you want to keep an eye on, specifically for above 35.
So, couple more questions that our audience want to know about. One is there does fasting help or hurt gut health? How does fasting and gut health have anything to do with each other?
Great. I love that the audience are asking such lovely questions. So, there's a lot of talk around intermittent fasting, and it's wonderful. I think it's a great tool for both longevity and gut health. Again, personalization is key. If you have adrenal fatigue, if you're a woman in your luteal phase during your menstrual cycle, if you are perimenopausal or menopausal, and if you are an individual with any kind of hormonal imbalances, do not fast. You're already sensitive to cortisol. It's only going to tax you further. And we saw gut brain axis. If you're stressed, your gut microbiome is stressed. Then fasting is not a tool. If none of these are there, everything is fine here, then fasting is a great tool.
Got it. The other one that's a common question, right, is what's the relationship between gut health and weight loss?
Right. So, very interesting early research, which shows. I think I spoke about the study on mice, but there was also a very interesting study on twins, humans, where they studied the gut microbiome to figure out why one twin is sort of overweight and the other was healthy and fit, considering that genetic makeup would be pretty similar. So they realized that the gut microbiome actually was very different, and as an extension to this research, we understand that the gut microbiome plays a big role in multiple things when it comes to metabolism. One, the way our body metabolizes food. Different people, digest and metabolize it differently. Second, the glucose metabolism. So a lot of drugs are becoming pretty popular, but if you look at our gut microbiome in itself, the small chain fatty acid plays a big role in how we sort of digest or metabolize glucose. Second, there are gut hormones like GLP-1, which manage or directly affects the way we uptake and balance glucose. So these are like direct influences the gut microbiome has on, if you have to say weight loss, but I'd like to call it metabolism in general. And other than that, of course, satiety, etc. All of these again, neurochemicals, gut microbiome directly influences.
Yeah, I mean, like to the point that you mentioned earlier, right? That your gut health also affects your sugar cravings.
Absolutely.
You consume more sugar, harder to lose weight, things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Super. Before we close, any final tips for our listeners and audience on like keeping the gut happy?
Yeah, absolutely. Build a foundation. A strong foundation is going to have a beautiful building, right? So, sleep, mental health, and what you eat. And in fact, I want to close with a line we are what we consume, we're not what we eat. And when I say consume, is not just food, it is content, it is conversations, it is thoughts.
Wow, wow, I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really glad having you here.
No, absolute pleasure. And thank you for having me.